everyone, this is Radam Kakakhail and welcome to Football Ittehaad's first official YouTube podcast. Now, what is Football Ittehaad? We have one simple mantra, uniting football in Pakistan. What we basically do is that we are offering young budding football enthusiasts to become and voice out their own selves, their love for the game throughout the country and in the wider spectrum. Today, I am joined by two established enthusiasts like myself, Mr. Hassan Qureshi, and the well-renowned Mr. Rob Dawson from ESPN.
Hi, Adam. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to be able to share a stage with someone as respected as Rob. You know, we're all subscribed, liked, waiting for every minute Rob sends out a tweet. We get to know at the same time. So, Rob, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. So, Adam, you wanted to ask Rob something?
Yes, Rob, before we, dive into the footballing questions, I just want to know what makes Rob Dawson who he is and what was your earliest footballing memory?
Oh, my first football memories were at a lower league team in England called Stockport County, which is the closest team to where I grew up. Obviously, it was cheaper to get in there than it was the big top flight teams, and my dad would work at the club sometimes, so he would take me down on a Saturday, and it was very much kind of lower league level. It was, obviously good players, but not great players. A smallish crowd of a couple of thousand every week, and it was enjoyable. It was where I learned to love football, and obviously I'm lucky enough now to get to report on it and cover it and go to some big games, and it's something that I'm very thankful for.
That's phenomenal to hear. These stories are ones that really inspire us, the slightly younger ones, to pursuing our own journalism dreams. And I'm very glad that you are spreading the positivity that you are and motivating us to be better versions of ourselves. Right then, so Hassan, let's dive into the questions.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Lots going on, lots of transfer talk, as you can imagine. I'm sure your Twitter is blowing up. I'm sure I'm responsible for 10% of that, so I apologize beforehand. So with this whole Kane situation, Rob, do you think we're hearing lots more from Daniel Levy along the lines that he might not want to sell? Do you think that's an option? Do you think Spurs will accept players? And personally, do you think someone like Sterling or Gabriel Jesus would be okay to go to Tottenham, considering where they are now and where City is now?
Well, yeah, obviously in that situation, Tottenham are really in charge of that situation because of Kane's contract situation. He's got 3 years left, I think it is, which is an awful long time on a contract for a top player. Obviously, people will know that Kane wants to leave Tottenham and wants to move to a club where he can challenge for the biggest trophies, and that's understandable. But in this situation, really, Tottenham hold the keys to that. Tottenham would be well within their rights to value Kane at 150 million, plus, and it's debatable whether anyone, including Manchester City, can afford to pay that. City have said that they are interested, but they've also said that they wouldn't mind waiting a year for Kane. It may be that it's not possible this summer, but becomes more possible down the line and next summer and beyond. So it's something that they will continue to monitor. In terms of players going the other way, yeah, I think there's a chance that could be offered to Tottenham. The problem with that is that a transfer is very complicated anyway. It's complicated enough to get two teams to agree to sell one player. When you throw another deal in the mix with another player going the opposite direction, it becomes even more complicated. And just to use one of your examples there, Raheem Sterling, I think City would be open to the possibility of Raheem moving the other way, but Sterling doesn't really want to go there. So that kind of kills that. It's dead in the water before it even gets off the ground. So that's the kind of thing you're dealing with these kind of big money, massive transfers. That said, City are desperate to sign a centre forward. They've obviously lost Sergio Aguero. It's a position they need to strengthen. We would expect them to continue to push for the likes of Kane towards the end of the window and see where they are. But as a personal view, I just can't see it happening, particularly this summer, just because Tottenham they don't have to sell. And Kane, in terms of valuation, Kane is a lot more valuable to Tottenham than he is to City.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one thing, John, I just want to confirm is that yes, City are in the market for a striker. They need to replace Aguero. They have the funds, everything. Now, at one point, as you said, we have Harry Kane. Next up, we have Erling Braut Haaland, who has City roots, and he will cost a fortune as well. Is that it is more of a long-term buy. Now, will it be viable for City to comply and break the bank for Haaland, or is there a chance that they might, as you said, wait a year and for now maybe go for a striker like Danny Ings or Tammy Abraham?
Yeah, I mean, that is an option. I mean, I mentioned there that City wouldn't mind waiting a year. What we've seen them do in the past is that they've identified a position. 2 years ago, it was a central midfielder. They wanted Jorginho, who eventually went to Chelsea. And instead of signing someone else, they just waited. They waited a year with what they had. They played Fernandinho there. And then a year later, they signed Rodri. They did the same at centre-back. Vincent Kompany left. They wanted Harry Maguire. Harry Maguire went to United. They didn't jump into the market again and sign someone else. They waited a year, and then they signed Ruben Dias. And obviously that's worked out. What City are saying is that it may be a situation where that happens again. They need a centre forward. They like Kane. They like Haaland. But it may be that they just wait a year. They go with what they've got. They don't sell Gabriel Jesus. They play, I don't know, maybe a false nine more often that we saw them do last season. And obviously Ferran Torres can do that job as well. And then by the time next summer rolls around, you've got Kane on the market. You've got Haaland on the market. And City have got a little bit of a wider choice. Obviously, Kane is a year further into his contract. Haaland would have a release clause that would be activated. It may be a lot easier to do a deal 12 months down the line than it is this summer.
Rob, also City have something, and a lot of people wonder about their left back situation. They have spent money, but somehow it feels like it's an area they need to consider looking into as well. Do you think they look to sell maybe Mendy or Zinchenko and have someone else like maybe Nuno Mendes or go for a left back, or is Pep happy with what he has, happy to work with it, not really that bothered about it?
No, I mean, I think in an ideal world, they would sign a left back, because obviously they've signed Benjamin Mendy a few seasons ago. And, while he's been very good in flashes, his injury record has meant that he can't be available every week. And that's what Pep wants. I think if they got a significant offer for Mendy, he would be allowed to leave. But again, there isn't much money in the transfer market this summer after what has happened with the coronavirus pandemic. Obviously, you've seen the likes of huge clubs like Real Madrid and Barcelona are only signing players on free transfers, which tells you exactly what the state of the transfer market is. I mean, in terms of left back, I think City have got other priorities. I think Pep wouldn't mind going into the season with Zinchenko as his first choice left back, with Mendy as cover, as we've seen him do last season and in the past. Obviously, João Cancelo can play there as well, so he does have options. But again, I think in an ideal world, it's an obvious position that you could look at and go, City could strengthen that position. But I just think in this window, there are other priorities. And it will probably be the case that they start the season with those three players and Zinchenko as sort of default first choice.
All right, that makes sense. Now, next up, we have another English romantics favorite, Jack Grealish. Now, we know that Villa have already signed Emiliano Buendia, and they're tailing around for Emil Smith-Rowe as well. Now, it feels a little bit that they may be making way for the imminent departure of Jack Grealish. How much sense would this deal make Grealish to Manchester City? What would be considered a decent bid from Villa's perspective, and whether they'd be willing to even negotiate something for a player like Jack?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a similar situation to Harry Kane and Spurs in that Harry Kane is worth more to Tottenham than he is to Manchester City, because City have got so many great players, but Spurs' team is built around Harry Kane. The same can be said about Aston Villa. Jack Grealish is probably worth more to Villa than he is to City because of the same reason. That said, he is a player that Pep admires a lot. He's spoken about him in press conferences in the past, which is quite unusual for Pep. He doesn't really like to talk about other clubs' players, but he has spoken about Jack in the past. And Grealish is at the stage of his career where he really needs to be playing Champions League football every week. And City obviously would offer him that. In terms of whether a deal can be done, I think there's a real possibility that one may get completed. Aston Villa are going to fight very, very hard to keep Jack Grealish. He's their captain. He's come through their academy. He's their star man. So it's natural that they want to keep him. And there's talk, even though he signed a new contract last summer, there's talk that they may offer him a new contract again this summer. Ultimately, it will be about the bid that City can put on the table. We're told that they are willing to pay around £100 million for Jack Grealish, and it would be very, very difficult for Aston Villa to turn down that kind of money, given what they could do with that in the transfer market. So, it has been a bit of a slow burner. Obviously, Jack has been away with England at the Euros and hasn't really been able to kind of be involved in those kind of discussions. But now he's away on holiday, I would expect that to kind of speed up a little bit and for City to get a definite answer one way or the other sooner rather than later.
Rob, do you think City have any alternatives in case the Grealish thing doesn't come through? You think they'd look at anyone else, or it's kind of like the same with the Kane situation? It's Grealish or it's no one, and they're happy to wait.
I think that it's a similar situation, and also it's not the Grealish thing is Pep wanting to add a great player to an already great forward line. It's not like there's a hole in the squad where he thinks I have to fill that with someone. Speaking right now, they've still got Bernardo Silva, they've got Sterling, they've got Foden, they've got Mahrez, Ferran Torres. You're talking about a wealth of talent still at the club. So it's not like they're going to be short-handed if they can't get Grealish. I think if they can't get him, I think what you'd find is that some of the players who are linked with moves away, the likes of Sterling, Bernardo Silva, they would stay. Pep isn't going to leave himself with a thin squad to challenge for the Premier League title and go again in the Champions League. So if Grealish arrived, I would expect at least one of those to leave. There's a lot of interest in Bernardo Silva from Spain. There's also been interest in Sterling as well from other clubs. So I'd expect someone to leave to make room for Grealish. But if Grealish doesn't arrive, I would expect them to keep most of those stars and for City to go into the new season with pretty much the same squad that did so well last year.
All right. Now, given the post-financial situation because of COVID and, how Pep Guardiola has often said that the club simply can't afford to sign big-name players, yet they are linked with them every day as we see. Are these transfers, these big money transfers, even possible during the current situation?
Not for everyone. No, certainly not. And I think that some of the established European heavyweights have found that they can't do those kind of deals. I mentioned before that you just look at the kind of deals that clubs have done this summer. Real Madrid have signed David Alaba on a free. Barcelona have signed Memphis Depay, Eric Garcia on free transfers. Even PSG have signed Sergio Ramos and Gini Wijnaldum, both on free transfers. So there isn't that much money around in the transfer market. I think the clubs who can still spend money, most of those are in the Premier League, and we've already seen United commit near enough £75 million to Jadon Sancho. It's expected that Chelsea will spend again with the money that they've got available. City have got money available, and if the right deal came around, they would spend that money. So yes, they are possible. Certainly not for everyone, and I think you'll find that most of the money this summer is spent from Premier League clubs and possibly PSG.
All right. So that wraps up our Manchester City part of it. Now let's move across the city and off to Hassan.
Yep. Thankfully, now we can not talk about City. Sorry to all the City fans watching this, but it's not nice to keep discussing your potential success. Rob, when we go to United, like you mentioned, Jadon Sancho, hopefully it's finally happened. We can stop worrying about it. Now, those of us that have spent the last, 2 years hearing that it's happening every other day, are we going to have a similar situation with Raphael Varane, or is there something more concrete? Last night, suddenly multiple sources started saying that they've agreed personal terms and the two clubs are close in evaluation, or at the moment for you also, it's just talk. Nothing concrete has come out of it so far.
No, that there is certainly something concrete there. United are talking to Varane's representatives about what kind of package he would need to move to Old Trafford. As of this morning, according to United, there was no agreement on personal terms, but it was something that was still being talked about. There hasn't been a discussion with Real Madrid yet about a fee, but obviously that would only come after they knew that they could agree a package with Varane. So that's not out of the ordinary, particularly everyone will know about Varane's contract situation at Real Madrid. And a large part of this is whether Varane tells Real Madrid that he will not sign a new contract. He is on holiday at the moment after being with France at the Euros and expected back into training, I think, on the 23rd of July, where obviously he will have to have a conversation at some point with Real Madrid about whether he's going to sign a contract or not, because I mentioned there about the financial issues that some of these clubs are having, and Real Madrid are not alone in that. They can't afford to lose Varane for free in 12 months. And if there's a chance that he's going to leave, they would rather cash in this summer and sell him than lose him on a free transfer next summer, which is obviously where United's interest come from. I think it may be one that drags on a little bit because Real Madrid will attempt to keep him. They've already lost Sergio Ramos. They can't really afford to lose their other main centre-back. He's someone that's worked with Ancelotti before, and Ancelotti likes him a lot. So it's obvious and right that Ancelotti gets a chance to try and convince him to stay. My personal feeling is that he will end up at Manchester United. Whether that happens imminently or not, I think is a different matter. Varane is obviously committed enough to moving to Old Trafford to enter into negotiations with United about wages, which is a good indicator that where his head is at. But again, with all these things, that's only half the battle. The real battle is agreeing a fee with Real Madrid. We saw that last summer with Borussia Dortmund and Jadon Sancho, that if you can't agree, that it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't get off the ground. And I think United are a little bit wary of that this summer with Varane, that obviously there may be a difference in valuation with Varane because of his contract situation, his age, two, and it'll be something that will need to be negotiated. Obviously, hopefully for United fans, he arrives at United because he's a fantastic player, and he's the type of signing that would make the rest of the Premier League turn around and think, United are serious title challengers this year.
All right, so Ole identified 3 to 4 key positions of strengthening this summer. We have talked about the winger situation. We have talked about the centre-back situation. Now, next up, what do you think is more valued right now when we talk about the third signing, as in terms of priority, a central midfielder or a right back?
My personal opinion would be that it would be a central midfielder. They've already got Wan-Bissaka at right back. He's performed well. He's obviously got areas of his game that need to improve, but he's very durable. I think he played 50 plus games last season. He's not someone that's injured often. He's very reliable. So in terms of where needs to be strengthened most, I would suggest it's the central midfield. The problem is that while United have got money to spend, their budget is not unlimited. And at the start of the summer, there was someone at United who said that he'd spoken to Ollie and that he'd seen some of the reports that United wanted Sancho, they wanted Kane, they wanted Declan Rice, Raphael Varane and Kieran Trippier. And obviously, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would love all those players to arrive in one summer, but you're talking about a £500 million summer, and that's just not realistic. I think what you may find is that United try to get to a point where they know exactly what's happening with Varane. That they made Varane their number one target after Sancho. Hopefully they sign Varane, and then with whatever is left of the budget, they then decide what to do with it. I think right back is lower down the order of priorities than a centre back alongside central midfielder. And what Solskjaer was told ahead of the summer was that all these positions will get strengthened eventually, but it will be a case of prioritising. You can't spend 200, 300 million in one summer. You need to be cautious still with how you spend that money. And it may be the case that Solskjaer gets some of those players this year. He's already got Sancho. There's a good chance that they'll get Varane. They may get one other, whether it's Trippier or Max Aarons or Camavinga, someone like that. And then everything else will have to wait a year. Whether that's Declan Rice in a year. He's turned down contract offers at West Ham. He may be more available in 12 months' time. So it'll be about prioritising for Solskjaer. He can't do everything he wants to do right away. It'll be about how he spreads his funds around, the way that the positions he deems more important than others. Strengthen those first, and then see where you're at. And if needs be, you strengthen the other positions in 12 months.
Rob, a lot of people talking about the fact that Diogo Dalot had a good time out on loan at Milan. Apparently, they want him back. Could United keep him and use him as someone who's able to play both on the left and the right side of defense? Or do you think, he might want to go out rather than not playing and go and play regularly at Milan, who are a club that are, in a good position, doing well? How do you see that happening? Do you think United will sanction another loan? Would United want to sell him? Because there was a lot of fanfare when he came about. Still a pretty young guy. He can go on to become pretty decent, but does he get to start with Van Bissaka and Shaw being pretty much, nailed on at United?
Yeah, I mean, certainly from Diogo's point of view, he wants to play regular games. He's at the stage of his career where he needs to have experience to develop, and he's very aware of that, which is one of the reasons why he went to Milan in the first place. As of today, he's expected back at Man United's training base soon after the Euros. So as it stands, he will be back at United and he will be a United player. You're right in that Milan are interested in re-signing him. The indications from them as of now are that they aren't willing to match what United value Dalot at. I think the offer was to take him on loan again with an obligation to buy in 12 months. I think for United to sell, it would take quite a large offer to tempt them to do that, because, like you say, he's still a very young guy. He's got quite a good chance to get an awful lot better. He's got a long time left on his contract. And also they paid, quite a big fee for him when he came in under Mourinho. So they would want to recoup quite a lot of that, which all of those things make it quite complicated. That said, it's obvious though that Solskjaer could do without him. He sanctioned a loan last year, and United coped fairly well. So if an offer came in, yeah, of course, it's something that they would look at. But I also wouldn't rule out him staying, because there are other players who could leave on loan. Brandon Williams can play on both sides, but it's expected that he would go out on loan either to someone like Southampton or Newcastle, get a year in the Premier League, get a year's experience, and come back a better player. So, if Williams was to go out on loan, they can't get Trippier for whatever reason. Maybe Atletico Madrid don't reduce their asking price. It's entirely possible that Dalot comes back and acts as cover on the left and the right.
All right. Enough right back talking, as you said, that it was more about a thing of priorities. Now, we know that central midfield is also a priority, and one starlet, a French sensation that we have in Camavinga, a player for Rennes. Now, he presents a unique proposition here. This summer, if he's available, the rumors are that he's available for 30 to 40 million, and United reportedly are in the market for him. Do United stand a chance of realistically signing him this window, or will Rennes perhaps adhere to his wishes and let him go to PSG or Real Madrid next summer for free?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's certainly interest from United in Camavinga. He's a player that they've looked at for a while. They are well aware of his contract situation, in that he's only got a year left, and French football at the moment is dealing with their own financial crisis because of the collapse of their TV deal, on top of what's happened with the COVID pandemic. So they are, it's the way it's been described at United, it's not a fire sale, but they are keen to recoup transfer fees where possible. Camavinga has got a lot of admirers. You've mentioned there PSG. There's a lot of clubs in Spain that would like to sign him. The last that we had from Man United was that they expected him to move to Spain, that was his choice, and that would be the move that he made. Obviously, until that happens, United will be interested and will be in for him. You're right in that he represents a unique opportunity, in that he's a very, very young player, and there is a chance now to sign him. If you let him go to PSG or Real Madrid or Barcelona or somewhere like that, the chances are that you may never get a chance to sign him again. If he becomes the player that people think he will become, you're not going to get a chance to bring him in for this kind of money again. So it's whether United decide to push the boat out a little bit and try and sign him this summer, or pass up the opportunity and let him move elsewhere. As I said, that United's feeling is that he will go to Spain, but they are not hiding the fact that they are interested in him. which says a lot. He's a player who's very, very highly rated. They would like him at Old Trafford. At the moment, I don't particularly see that happening. But again, until he actually moves and signs for someone else, it's always a possibility.
Rob, something similar at United, not maybe exactly the same, but something similar at United going on with Paul Pogba at the moment. There's a lot of talk about him possibly not signing that contract. Do United then take the decision to lose him a second time for nothing, having paid a lot of money to bring him back? Or do they think to themselves, right now, if he's not signing the contract, we need to get rid, we'll accept, whatever kind of bid that we get? Because like you said, the usual suspects won't be able to stump up the money for him unless they themselves have very big sales. Maybe if Juventus sell a few players, and they've always kind of wanted Pogba back, do United now make that decision to sell Pogba if he's not signing a contract, reinvest some of that money? Because again, they'll have more money to reinvest. They could possibly address the central midfield and the right back situation, both of them, by selling Pogba. Or do they also risk the fact that he might not sign the contract, risk losing him for a free again?
Yeah, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head there. It's a very, very complicated and difficult situation for United now. They would like to talk to him about a new contract. Obviously, those negotiations haven't happened yet, or as we were told, haven't happened yet. It's something that will happen imminently, just for United to see where Pogba is and what his intentions are. Because, like you say, the options now, if he doesn't sign the contract, are to sell him this summer, or to wait, hope that he signs a new contract and risk losing him for free in 12 months, which ultimately would be embarrassing for a club the size of United. To lose Paul Pogba twice for free would be embarrassing. There's no getting away from that. You're right in what you say, in that if United were to listen to offers this summer, they probably wouldn't get anything like their valuation. The clubs that Paul would like to play for, the likes of Barcelona, Real Madrid, PSG, they haven't got the money to buy Pogba, or to at least to meet United's valuation. The only one of those really that could do it is PSG. And even then it would take a sizable bid. And then you have to go and talk to Paul about his wages and the wage packet that it would take to bring him to PSG, sorry. And you're adding another hefty outlay on top of that. So United would like to keep him. They are willing to talk to him about a new contract. They would like to sign him for another 5 years if possible. But they are well aware that they don't hold the cards in this situation now. If Paul Pogba wants to leave for free in 12 months, he will do it. And I think there's a nervousness at United that we've seen this summer, that Mino Raiola, who looks after Donnarumma at AC Milan, has done exactly that with him. He's gone through years of contract negotiations. It's not happened. He's not re-signed at Milan, and he's ended up at PSG for nothing. And Milan have lost one of their huge assets without getting a fee for him. So there is a lot of nervousness at Old Trafford about that, and about the possibility of that happening. Ultimately, it will be about what Paul Pogba wants to do. It may be that he just carries on as things are and waits and waits and waits, because the longer he waits, the more profitable this will be for him. Whether that's signing a new contract at United, or whether that's joining a huge club on a free transfer next summer. Unless Paul Pogba has a horrible injury next season, which hopefully he doesn't, but that's the risk that lies in this for him. Unless that happens, he is very much in the driving seat of this situation.
Okay, that makes sense. And as you said, I concur to that. I mean, Mino Raiola can be a very tricky customer to deal with. Now, Rob, we've been waiting all day to ask you this. This morning, you gave a brief that Ole and his staff are preparing to shift to a more attack-minded midfield and a 4-3-3 formation. And perhaps that might sound the end of the McFred era. What does that mean for the defensive midfield situation? And do we have anyone in the current crop of players that can play in that defensive midfield role, or do we have alternatives lined up in the transfer market?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of that story, that is something that Solskjaer has discussed with his players and his coaching staff. It's something that they had identified last season. Anyway, they wanted to get more attacking players in a team. They've got a lot of very good forwards. They've got a lot more attacking midfielders than they have defensive midfielders, and they wanted to get more of those in the team. The benefit of playing in that way is that you get Fernandes plus one other. You get Pogba playing higher up the pitch. You get Donny van de Beek maybe playing higher up the pitch. And you know, ultimately, it makes, as a team, it should make you more offensive. You touched on there that one of the problems with that is that it obviously makes you a little bit weaker defensively, and it would need someone very particular to play in that holding midfield role. I think that Solskjaer thinks that that McTominay and Fred and Matic can play there on their own, but also it would depend very heavily on what happens at centre back. The reason that Fred and McTominay played so often together, especially in the big games, is just to make that core a lot more solid, because Maguire and Lindelof have at times not looked particularly sturdy. I think if you bring Varane into that team next to Maguire, that centre-half pairing looks an awful lot more secure, which allows you to maybe take the shackles off going forward a little bit more. You play one player in front of them and then two in front of them, you know, a Fernandes, Pogba or Van de Beek or whoever it is, with three out-and-out attacking players, you know, Rashford, Marshall, Sancho, Cavani, Greenwood, all those players. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's, as things stand, it is the plan ahead of next season to make United more offensive. Obviously, there are issues around that, and it's not something that you can just sort of stick to week in, week out. And it will be about which players are available, which teams you're playing, the state of the league, whether you're playing home and away. But as a general idea, Solskjaer wants to make them that is the idea that he's come up with to make that happen.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Rob, for your time. You know, it's just so wonderful to be able to talk to someone who knows about all of that is going on. The Pakistani fan base, you know, it's a young fan base. A lot of people are learning. You know, sometimes I'm seeing people on Twitter asking and saying, you know, well, what would you guys know? You live so far away. You don't go to the games. You don't do all of that. There's people staying up here till 4 a.m. watching games. They've got uni or school the next day. They're just as involved. I think I've got more United kits than a lot of other people have, and I have to pay extra for them and get them sent over here and whatnot. So for young fans, for young people who are watching this, and like Irdam said, for those who want to try and, you know, make a career out of this, listening to someone like you talking about all of this and your own journey, it's very inspiring, and we're really grateful for you for taking the time out for today. Well,
thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, Rob. Take care.
Thank you, Rob. Just before you go off, I just want final Premier League predictions for this season.
Already.
What? Who's going to win it? Who's going to win it?
Yeah, the top four.
Ooh,
top four. I think City will win it again. I think United will run them a very, very close second, especially if they can get Varane. After that, I think it'll be Chelsea and then Liverpool, although those two may if Liverpool get their key players back and add a couple of new signings, they could be very dangerous as well. So it's going to be very, very competitive. You know, there are probably 6 teams who can win the Premier League title, which is great for fans because it's going to make for a very, very exciting season.
Perfect. Let's see how it goes. Thank you very much, Rob, again, for your analysis and your time. We really appreciate that and looking forward to having more shows in the future. Thank you.
Have a good one, Rob. Thank you.
You too. Thanks, guys.